"You're coming with me." Millionaire CEO found a freezing nurse at the bus stop, then took her home. On a cold winter night in New York, the snow fell steadily, blanketing the city in a crisp white layer. The wind howled through the streets, biting at anyone who dared to stand still for too long. Among the few brave souls waiting at the bus stop was a young nurse named Anna. She pulled her coat tightly around her, but it offered little protection against the chill. The night shift at the hospital had ended hours ago, and she had hoped to catch the last bus home. But it seemed like the cold was determined to keep her waiting, making every minute feel like an eternity. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she barely had the energy to check it. With each passing second, her teeth chattered harder, and her fingers, numb from the cold, fumbled with the hem of her scarf. Her thoughts drifted to her small apartment, where a warm bed awaited her, if she could just get there. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until they were right next to her. A man, dressed in a sleek black coat, stood beside her, holding his jacket open, offering it to her without a word. Startled, Anna looked up. His eyes were kind, but there was an air of confidence about him that she couldn't quite place. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice smooth and warm. She hesitated, her teeth still chattering, but nodded. "I'm fine, it's really cold." Without missing a beat, he shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. Anna blinked, not sure what to make of this stranger's kindness. "You should be careful," he added, stepping back. "The bus will be here soon. I'll wait with you." She watched him for a moment, unsure if this was a dream or if her exhaustion was making her hallucinate. But as she felt the warmth of the coat, she realized it was very real. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling the coat tighter around her. The man smiled, a faint glimmer in his eyes. "You're welcome," he said simply. They stood in silence, the sound of the distant traffic and the crunch of the snow underfoot filling the air. For a moment, it felt as if the world had stopped, leaving just the two of them at this bus stop in the middle of the night. Anna had no idea who this man was, but his kindness made the cold night seem a little more bearable. The bus finally arrived, its headlights cutting through the snowstorm. Anna turned to the man, preparing to thank him once more, but he was already walking away. She blinked, wondering if she had imagined it all. But as the bus doors opened, she caught a glimpse of his face one last time. A quick, almost imperceptible smile, before he disappeared into the crowd. Anna climbed onto the bus, her mind racing. Who was that man? Why had he helped her? She glanced down at the coat, a strange feeling swirling in her chest. Little did she know, this simple act of kindness would change her life forever. But for now, all she could do was try to shake off the chill and focus on getting home. Later that week, Anna was back at work, her mind still replaying the events of that night. She had almost forgotten about the stranger at the bus stop when something unexpected happened. A message popped up on her phone. It was an invitation to a charity gala she had never heard of before, but what caught her eye was the sender's name, Grant Carter, CEO of Carter Enterprises. A billionaire. She paused, staring at the message for a long moment. Why would someone like him be reaching out to her? Anna didn't know it yet, but the truth about the man who had warmed her up that cold night was about to come to light. And when it did, nothing in her life would ever be the same. Days passed, and Anna's life slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The bus stop incident was still fresh in her mind, but she tried to push it to the back of her thoughts, focusing on her work at the hospital and the little apartment she could barely afford. Life was a constant struggle, and though she tried to find comfort in the small things, it was hard to ignore the overwhelming weight of her circumstances. That was until the invitation to the charity gala arrived. The name Grant Carter was now familiar to her, but she could hardly believe it. Why would someone like him be reaching out to her? She still couldn't shake off the memory of the man who had given her his jacket that cold night. But now, the message seemed so out of place. Was he the same person? She stared at the invitation for a while, unsure of what to do. Could this be a mistake? Or was there a reason he had chosen her? With a mixture of hesitation and curiosity, she decided to go. The night of the gala, Anna stood in front of the mirror in her tiny apartment, staring at the dress she had borrowed from a friend. It was a simple black dress, nothing extravagant, but it made her feel slightly more confident, at least enough to blend into the crowd. The idea of attending such a high-profile event made her anxious, but she knew she had to seize this opportunity. It might be her only chance to step out of the life she had been living for so long. The moment Anna stepped into the gala, she felt out of place. The glittering lights, the fancy dresses, and the tuxedos all seemed like another world to her. But she took a deep breath and made her way inside, trying to ignore the feeling that everyone was staring at her. As she walked through the crowd, trying to find the right table, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned around to find herself face to face with none other than the man who had helped her that night at the bus stop. Grant Carter, the man she had no idea was a billionaire CEO, was standing right in front of her, looking just as confident and commanding as he had that night. He smiled at her, his eyes warm with recognition. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. Anna froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had never expected to see him here, and certainly not in such a grand setting. I didn't know you were," she stammered, her heart racing. "A billionaire?" "Yes, I know it's a bit of a surprise," he said, his smile widening. "But that's not what matters here." His words left her speechless. Was this all a setup? Had he invited her here just because of that night? But before she could ask any more questions, he placed a hand on her arm gently, guiding her through the crowd. "Come with me," he said. "There's someone I want you to meet." Anna was still in a daze as he led her through the lavish ballroom. She had never been this close to a man like him, let alone someone with so much power and wealth. But as they walked, she couldn't help but notice how comfortable he seemed in his world, how at ease he was among all the high-profile people. When they reached the main stage, he stopped and turned to her. "This gala is for a good cause," he explained. "And I believe you can make a difference." The words felt heavy, loaded with meaning. Anna was confused but intrigued. "Make a difference?" she echoed. "How?" Grant's eyes sparkled with something like hope. "I want you to join my team. You've got the kind of heart that this foundation needs. And I know you can help people. You already have with me." The realization hit her like a wave. He wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a chance to change her life, to do something meaningful with it. Anna's mind raced. She had spent so many years struggling, barely getting by, but here was a man, a billionaire, offering her something more than she had ever dreamed of. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to take that leap? I don't know what to say," she whispered, feeling the weight of the decision settle in her chest. Grant smiled softly, his hand still resting on her arm. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just know that the opportunity is here. When you're ready, we can talk more." As he spoke, she couldn't help but wonder if this was fate. If the kindness he had shown her that night was the beginning of something much larger than either of them could have imagined. The following week, Anna couldn't stop thinking about the offer Grant Carter had made. His words echoed in her mind. "I want you to join my team. You've got the kind of heart that this foundation needs." At first, she had brushed it off, thinking it was just an offer made out of courtesy. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how much it could change her life. She had spent years working double shifts as a nurse, barely making ends meet, never having the time or energy to even think about her own dreams. She had always put others first, but now, for the first time, someone was offering her a chance to make a difference, to be more than just a tired, overworked nurse. But it wasn't just the opportunity that had her mind racing. It was Grant, the man who had helped her when she was freezing at the bus stop, the man who was now offering her a career and a chance at a better life. There was something about him that made her heart flutter, something she couldn't quite explain. He wasn't just a millionaire CEO. He was kind, considerate, and genuinely interested in helping her. And yet, Anna still felt a sense of doubt creeping in. Was this all too good to be true? Was she really the right person for the job? She had never imagined herself in a position like this, and the thought of stepping into his world, a world of power and wealth, made her nervous. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she failed? As the days passed, she couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty, but she knew one thing for sure. This was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. She had to at least try. On a crisp Friday afternoon, Anna found herself walking into the Carter Enterprises building. It was even more impressive than she had imagined, with its towering glass walls and sleek modern design. The lobby was bustling with activity, the hum of business meetings and phone calls filling the air. She couldn't help but feel out of place, like a small fish in a vast ocean. But as she stood in the elevator, her heart pounding in her chest, she reminded herself that she had come this far, and she couldn't turn back now. When the doors opened on the top floor, she was greeted by a sleek, minimalist office space. The walls were adorned with tasteful artwork, and the windows offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Grant was waiting for her by his desk, looking even more composed and powerful than he had at the gala. "Welcome, Anna," he said, offering her a warm smile. "I'm glad you made it." His presence was commanding, but there was a softness to his voice that made her feel at ease. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat." As she sat down, she couldn't help but notice how effortlessly he seemed to navigate this world. He was a man who had built an empire, yet there was a kindness in his eyes that made her believe he genuinely cared about her success. He began to explain the role he had in mind for her, working as part of his foundation, helping to organize charity events and manage outreach programs. It was a big responsibility, but he had confidence in her abilities. "I know you've been through a lot, Anna," he said, leaning forward slightly. "But I also know you have the potential to do great things. This is more than just a job. It's a chance to make a real impact." His words hit her like a wave. She had always dreamed of doing something meaningful, but she never thought it would happen like this. The path to her dreams had always seemed so distant, so unreachable. But now, sitting across from Grant, it felt like the impossible might actually be possible. Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, feeling the weight of the decision on her shoulders. "This is more than I ever imagined." Grant smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "You don't have to say anything right now. Take your time. But remember, this is your chance. And if you're ready, we can do something incredible together." Anna sat back, the weight of the offer still heavy in her chest. She had never imagined her life could change so quickly, but now, she had a choice to make. Take a risk and embrace the future or stay in the life she had always known, one that was safe, but unfulfilled. But for the first time in a long while, she felt hope. And that was enough to make her believe that maybe, just maybe, it was time to take a leap of faith. After a few days of restless thinking, Anna found herself standing in front of her small apartment, staring at the invitation to the charity event Grant had mentioned. She had spent hours deliberating over it, wondering if this was a mistake, wondering if she was truly ready to step into a world so far removed from her own. But the thought of turning back felt like a missed opportunity, a chance to change her life forever. She wasn't sure what she was afraid of, the unknown, or perhaps the idea of success she had never truly believed in. With a deep breath, she reached for the invitation, crumpled it slightly in her hand, and threw caution to the wind. That evening, Anna stood before the grand entrance of Carter Enterprises, the towering building looming before her like something out of a movie. The lights were bright, casting a glow that seemed almost surreal, as if she were about to enter a world she had never been meant to see. But she had made her decision, and now there was no turning back. As she walked through the revolving doors, the air inside was cool and crisp, filled with the hum of quiet conversation and the occasional clink of glass. The room was full of well-dressed professionals, mingling in a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. Anna felt completely out of place, a small fish in a vast ocean. She smoothed down her dress, reminding herself that this wasn't about fitting in. It was about taking a chance on herself. Then, she saw him. Grant. He was standing across the room, effortlessly commanding the attention of everyone around him. His confidence was magnetic, and yet when his eyes met hers, he smiled warmly, as if they were the only two people in the room. Without a second thought, he walked toward her, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. "I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice smooth and comforting, just as it had been that night at the bus stop. Anna smiled nervously, her heart racing. "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, trying her best to sound composed. "I wasn't sure if I belonged here." "You do," he said, his tone reassuring. "You belong here just as much as anyone." His words, simple as they were, seemed to dissolve the tension in her chest, and for a moment, she allowed herself to relax. He led her through the crowd, making introductions to other guests, his presence filling the space with an air of ease. She had never felt so out of place in her life, yet with him by her side, it didn't feel as terrifying as she had imagined. Eventually, they made their way to a small, private table in the corner, away from the rest of the event. The soft hum of conversation from the rest of the gala faded into the background, leaving just the two of them alone in the midst of it all. "How are you feeling?" Grant asked, his eyes searching hers. "Nervous," she admitted, her voice quiet. "But in a good way, I think." He chuckled softly, a genuine warmth in his laugh. "That's a good sign," he said. "I want you to know, this isn't just about what you can do for us. It's about you, your dreams, your future. I see potential in you, Anna, more than you realize." His words, so sincere, made her heart skip a beat. No one had ever looked at her like that before, like she was more than just someone struggling to get by. For the first time in a long time, Anna began to believe in herself. She had been so focused on survival that she had forgotten to dream. But maybe, just maybe, Grant saw something in her that she couldn't see in herself. She hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted softly. "I've spent so many years just getting by, doing what I can to make ends meet. This feels so much bigger than me." Grant reached across the table, placing his hand over hers, the gesture gentle but reassuring. "You don't have to be ready right now," he said. "But when you are, I'll be here. And I'll help you take that step. All you have to do is believe in yourself the way I believe in you." His words were simple, but they carried so much weight. Anna looked into his eyes, seeing not just a man of power and wealth, but someone who genuinely cared, someone who believed in her. For the first time in a long while, Anna felt like she had found someone who saw her potential, who saw her for who she could be, not just the person she was. The realization hit her like a wave. This wasn't just about a job or an opportunity. It was about a new beginning, a chance to rewrite her story. And as she sat there with Grant, listening to his encouraging words, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the moment everything had been leading up to. The following days were a blur for Anna. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted, like the ground beneath her feet had suddenly moved, and she was standing on solid, uncharted territory. She spent her days at the hospital and her nights mulling over Grant's words. She felt torn between the life she had always known and the new path he was offering her, a path full of unknowns, but also full of possibilities. The invitation to join his foundation was still on her mind, and she knew it was an opportunity she couldn't ignore, but the fear of leaving behind everything familiar kept her up at night. What if she wasn't good enough? What if the world of wealth and power was too much for her? What if she failed? The doubt was suffocating, but as each day passed, she could feel herself becoming more determined. On the morning she finally made the decision to take the leap, she stood in front of the mirror, staring at herself with a mix of anxiety and excitement. She had sent her acceptance email to Grant, agreeing to take on the role in his foundation, and now she was heading to the office for her first official day. The nerves were still there, but they felt different this time. Almost like a nervous energy she could channel into something great. When Anna arrived at Carter Enterprises that morning, everything felt like it was in motion. The building seemed even more imposing than before, but as she entered the lobby, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She was ready. She had made her choice. As she rode the elevator to the top floor, her stomach fluttered with anticipation. When the doors opened, she was greeted by the same sleek, modern office space she had seen on her first visit, but now it felt like a place she truly belonged. Grant was already waiting for her by his desk, and as soon as he saw her, he stood up, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Welcome aboard, Anna," he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "I'm glad you decided to join us." Her heart skipped a beat at the sincerity in his tone. "Thank you," she replied, trying to sound confident, though she could feel the butterflies in her stomach. "I'm excited to be here." Grant motioned for her to sit down across from him, and as she did, she noticed how easy it was to be around him. His presence was comforting, like she could trust him completely. "We've got a lot of work to do," he said, his tone shifting to one of focus. "But I believe in you. I think you're going to do great things here." Anna nodded, trying to suppress the rush of emotions building up inside her. She had no idea how much this would change her life. As the day progressed, Anna found herself settling into the rhythm of her new role. She worked closely with Grant's team to organize an upcoming charity event, helping to coordinate volunteers, set up the venue, and manage the logistics. It was more than she had ever done before, but every step felt right. She was doing something meaningful, something that had an impact on people's lives. By the end of the day, as she stood outside the building waiting for a cab, She felt a sense of accomplishment, something she had rarely felt before. Her life was finally moving in the direction she had always wanted, and she knew it was only the beginning. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, event planning, and team coordination. Anna threw herself into the work, eager to prove herself, and each day she felt more at home in this new world. Her confidence grew, not just in her professional life, but also in herself. Grant's belief in her had given her the push she needed, and with each new challenge, she was realizing just how capable she really was. One evening, as she sat at her desk working late on some event details, she heard the soft click of the door behind her. She turned around to find Grant standing in the doorway, a look of admiration on his face. "You're doing great," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I knew you had it in you." Anna's heart swelled at his words. It felt good to be recognized, to know that all the hard work she was putting in was being seen. She smiled, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Grant. I wouldn't be here without your support." He stepped into the room, walking over to her desk. "I believe in you, Anna," he said quietly, looking her in the eyes. "And I always will." In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about something deeper, something real. She realized she had found more than just a career here. She had found someone who believed in her, who saw her for the person she could be, not just the person she had been. And as they stood there, silently acknowledging the connection between them, Anna knew that whatever came next, she was ready. She had found her place in this world, and it was only going to get better from here. Weeks passed, and Anna's life began to settle into a rhythm she had never known before. Her role at Carter Enterprises had opened up doors she had once thought were beyond her reach, and with each passing day, she felt more confident in her abilities. Grant continued to be her biggest supporter, always offering words of encouragement and guidance when she needed them most. The charity event she had worked so hard on was a success, and as Anna looked around at the smiling faces, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was the first time she had truly felt like she was making a difference, and it was a feeling she never wanted to let go of. But even as things were going well, Anna couldn't deny that something was shifting between her and Grant. It wasn't just the professional relationship they had built. There was something deeper, something unspoken that seemed to grow with every interaction. She had always admired him for his kindness and generosity, but now, as she spent more time with him, she realized there was more to it. The way he looked at her, the way his eyes seemed to soften whenever she spoke. It was as if he saw her in a way no one else ever had. It was hard for Anna to ignore the growing attraction she felt toward him, but she pushed the thoughts aside. She didn't want to complicate things. She had worked too hard to get to this point to let her personal feelings get in the way of her career. She focused on her work, keeping her interactions with Grant professional, even if it was becoming harder and harder to maintain that distance. One evening, after a long day of meetings and event planning, Anna found herself in the office, going over the final details for an upcoming project. It was late, and the building was quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft tapping of her keyboard. She was lost in her thoughts when the door to her office opened, and Grant stepped inside. He looked around the room for a moment, his gaze landing on her as she sat at her desk. "You're still here?" he asked, his voice gentle. Anna looked up, startled. "Yeah, just finishing up some things," she replied, trying to sound casual, though she could feel her heart racing. Grant walked over to her desk and leaned against the edge, his presence calm, yet commanding. "You've been working nonstop lately. Don't you ever take a break?" he asked, his tone more playful than usual. Anna laughed softly, the tension in the room easing for a moment. "I guess I'm just getting used to the pace," she said, trying to brush it off. "I want to make sure everything goes well." He nodded, his eyes scanning her face as if trying to read her thoughts. "You've been doing great," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But don't forget to take care of yourself too." There was something in his eyes that made Anna's heart skip a beat. For a moment, it felt like the world outside of this office had faded away. It was just the two of them, standing in a space filled with unspoken words and emotions that neither of them had acknowledged before. The air between them seemed charged, as if something was on the verge of being said. But just as Anna opened her mouth to speak, the silence was broken by the soft chime of her phone. She quickly reached for it, grateful for the interruption. "Sorry, I should take this," she said, her voice sounding slightly strained. Grant straightened up, stepping back from the desk. "Of course, no problem," he said, his tone now distant. Anna answered the call, but her mind was still on the conversation she had just had with Grant. There was something there, something that neither of them had addressed, but she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge it. Not yet. The call ended, and she sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She had to focus on the task at hand, but she couldn't deny that the moment with Grant had left a mark on her. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, the way he made her feel like she was more than just an employee, more than just someone doing a job. The next few days passed in a blur of work, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that things were changing between them. There were subtle glances, lingering touches, and moments that seemed to stretch on longer than they should. She could feel the chemistry between them building, and every time they were in the same room, it became harder to ignore. One evening, after another successful event, Grant invited her out for dinner to celebrate. It was just the two of them, and as they sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant, the conversation flowed easily. The usual light-hearted banter was there, but this time, there was something more. It was in the way he looked at her, in the way his hand occasionally brushed against hers as they reached for their glasses, and in the way his voice softened when he spoke her name. By the end of the evening, Anna knew she couldn't deny it any longer. The feelings she had tried so hard to suppress were there, and they weren't going away. But as much as she wanted to act on them, she knew there were still so many questions left unanswered. Was it just attraction, or was there something more? Could they really have something beyond their professional relationship? As Grant walked her to her car, he stopped in front of it, his hand lingering on the door handle. "I had a great time tonight," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Me too," Anna replied, her heart racing in her chest. For a moment, there was silence between them, and then Grant leaned in, his face inches from hers. "Anna, he stopped, as if unsure of what to say next, but Anna knew what he was trying to say, and before she could stop herself, she leaned in too, closing the space between them. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, but as their lips met, it felt like everything else in the world had faded away. In that moment, there were no more questions, no more doubts. It was just the two of them, finally giving in to the feelings that had been building for so long. The kiss lingered for a moment, soft and uncertain, but it held an intensity that neither of them had expected. As they pulled away, their eyes locked, and for the first time, Anna could see the vulnerability in Grant's gaze, something she hadn't noticed before. They both stood there for a moment, silent, each caught in their own thoughts. The night air felt cooler now, the quiet of the street surrounding them, but Anna's heart was racing, her mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. It was as if a wall had been broken down between them, and everything that had been left unsaid was suddenly out in the open. "I didn't mean to," Grant started, his voice a little rough, as if he were still processing his own emotions. I didn't want to wait anymore." Anna smiled softly, her fingers still tingling from the touch of his hand. "Neither did I," she admitted, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and excitement. The air between them had shifted, and even though the world around them was still the same, everything felt different now. The following days were filled with a new energy, an unspoken connection that seemed to intensify with every glance, every conversation. The chemistry between them was undeniable, but Anna still wasn't sure what it all meant. Was it just a fleeting moment, or was there something deeper here? The tension built in the air every time they were near each other, and even though they hadn't spoken about it directly, both of them could feel the unspoken bond growing stronger. At work, things continued as usual, but Anna found herself distracted, her thoughts often drifting back to Grant. She couldn't deny the way he made her feel, like she mattered, like she was more than just an employee to him. But at the same time, she knew the complications it could bring. There was the power imbalance, the professional boundaries, the risks of mixing business with personal feelings. She wasn't sure if she was ready to navigate all of that. One afternoon, while they were working on a new project together, Anna caught a glimpse of Grant, who was lost in thought. She had never seen him look so serious, so distant. It was unlike the confident, charismatic man she had come to know. "Grant, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Unsure if she was crossing a line. He looked up at her, a faint smile appearing on his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." Anna couldn't help but feel a pang of concern. This wasn't like him. "You know, If you ever want to talk about it. She trailed off, unsure of how to finish. He studied her for a moment, as if weighing his words, before speaking. It's just the pressure, he said, his voice quiet. I have a lot riding on this foundation. I want to help people, but sometimes it feels like it's never enough. I guess I'm just trying to balance it all. Anna nodded, understanding more than she let on. She had spent years juggling her own struggles, trying to make ends meet, trying to do the best she could despite the obstacles. She could relate to that feeling of never being able to do enough, of always wanting to give more. You don't have to do it all alone, she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. You've got a great team here, and I'm here to help, too. For a moment, their eyes met, and in that instant, something passed between them, something more than just the professional connection they had built. It was a mutual understanding, an unspoken promise that they would support each other. Grant gave her a small, appreciative smile. Thanks, Anna. That means a lot. They went back to their work, but the conversation had left its mark. Anna couldn't help but think that maybe Grant's struggles were not so different from her own. Maybe, just maybe, they were both trying to find their way in a world that often seemed overwhelming. And as the days went on, their bond deepened. But with every passing moment, Anna's feelings for him grew more complicated. She was no longer sure where the line was between professional respect and personal attraction. She didn't know how to handle it, how to move forward without jeopardizing everything they had built. One evening, after an especially long day, Anna stayed late at the office, going over the details of a new charity event. As she worked, she heard footsteps approaching. She didn't have to look up to know it was Grant. He always seemed to appear at just the right moment, as if he knew exactly when she needed him. I thought you'd be gone by now, he said, his voice light. But there was something more in it now, something she couldn't quite place. Just finishing up, she replied. Her fingers paused over her keyboard. He leaned against the desk, his presence as calming as always. You don't always have to stay late. You've done enough for today. She smiled, but there was a hint of frustration in her tone. I know, but I want to make sure everything's perfect. I don't want to let anyone down. He reached out, gently lifting her chin so their eyes met. You won't let anyone down. You're already doing great. Just take a breath and let it be. His words, simple yet so meaningful, eased the tension in her chest. She realized then that maybe it wasn't about perfection. It was about progress, about taking things one step at a time. As he stood there, looking at her with such genuine care, Anna knew that whatever happened next, she was no longer alone. She had found someone who truly saw her, and with that realization, a new chapter of their story was beginning to unfold. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Anna and Grant only deepened. They continued to work closely together on various projects, each one bringing them closer, not just as colleagues, but as something more. Every conversation seemed to hold a new layer of connection, each glance between them lingering a bit longer than before. But even as they grew closer, Anna couldn't shake the lingering doubts in her mind. Was this just a fleeting connection, or was there something real between them? She had worked so hard to get to where she was, and the last thing she wanted was to risk it all for something that could end in disappointment. Yet, every time she looked at Grant, her heart told her something different. There was a tenderness in his eyes, a sincerity in his touch that made it impossible to deny that there was something more than just professional admiration. One afternoon, as they were wrapping up a meeting in the office, Grant asked her if she would join him for dinner. It was meant to be a casual celebration of their recent successes, but as they sat across from each other in the quiet, dimly lit restaurant, Anna couldn't ignore the weight of the moment. There was something different in the air tonight. As they shared their meal, their conversation flowed effortlessly, the usual banter now laced with a quiet understanding, as if they both knew that this evening was about more than just business. At one point, Grant set his fork down and looked at her with a gaze that made her heart race. Anna, I've been thinking a lot lately, he began, his voice low, filled with an unspoken sincerity. She looked up at him, her breath catching in her throat. About what? She asked, though she already had an idea of what was coming. About us, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. I can't deny that what we have is more than just work. I don't want to pretend like it's anything else anymore. Anna's heart pounded in her chest. She had been waiting for him to say something like this, but hearing it out loud made everything feel so real. Grant, she started, but the words caught in her throat. Her mind raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I care about you, Anna," he continued, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "I care about you more than I've ever cared about anyone, and I think it's time we stopped pretending." The room felt suddenly warmer, as if the words he had just spoken had shifted the very atmosphere between them. Anna's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She had never imagined she would be here, sitting across from a man she admired, someone who had changed her life in so many ways, yet now she felt uncertain. Could they really make it work? Could she risk her newfound stability for something so unknown? Before she could answer, Grant reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said, his thumb lightly brushing over her skin. "But I need you to know that I'm here, and I'm willing to take that step with you, wherever it leads." Anna's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him. There was no mistaking the sincerity in his eyes, the depth of emotion that was reflected there. She had been so focused on keeping her career on track, on keeping her heart guarded. But now, faced with the truth of what they had shared, it was impossible to ignore the pull she felt toward him. Slowly, a smile crept onto her face. "I think I'm ready," she whispered. Grant's face lit up, and without saying another word, he leaned across the table and kissed her softly. The kiss was everything. A promise, a new beginning, and a quiet understanding that whatever the future held, they would face it together. When they broke apart, Anna felt a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. This was the start of something real. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, the world seemed a little brighter, and the path ahead felt a little clearer. No matter where it would take them, Anna knew she wasn't alone anymore. With Grant by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The journey they had begun was only just starting, but it felt like they had already found their way home. Months passed, and the bond between Anna and Grant grew stronger with each passing day. What started as a professional relationship had blossomed into something deeper, something neither of them had expected. They worked side by side, tackling new projects and overcoming obstacles, but now, they did it not only as colleagues, but as partners. The charity events continued to thrive under their leadership, and with each event, Anna felt more connected to the cause, more connected to her purpose. Grant's support had been unwavering, and as the foundation grew, so did her confidence. But it wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the life they were building together. Anna had never imagined that her life would take such a turn. When she had first met Grant, she never could have predicted that this man, this CEO, would change her world in such a profound way. He had given her opportunities she never thought she'd have, and more than that, he had shown her that she was capable of so much more than she had ever believed. She had found love in the most unexpected of places, and it was with a man who understood her, who saw her for who she truly was, and who valued her not just for her work, but for her heart. One evening, after a particularly successful fundraiser, Anna and Grant found themselves standing on the balcony of their office, looking out over the city. The lights of the city below sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars, and the air was cool and crisp. It felt like a moment of peace, a quiet pause after the chaos of the event. "We did it," Anna said, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Grant smiled, his arm wrapping around her waist as he pulled her close. "We did," he replied, his voice soft but full of pride. "And it's only the beginning." Anna leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. She had never felt so certain about anything in her life. With him, she felt at home. With him, she felt like she could take on the world. "I'm so grateful for you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Grant turned her around gently, lifting her chin so she could look into his eyes. "And I'm grateful for you," he replied. "You've changed my life in ways I can't even put into words." Anna smiled, her heart swelling with love. She had never imagined that she would find someone who cared for her so deeply, someone who saw her not as a nurse, not as an employee, but as a person with dreams and aspirations of her own. "What's next for us?" Anna asked, her voice filled with curiosity, but also excitement for the future. Grant's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Whatever we want it to be," he said, his voice filled with a sense of certainty. "Together, we can do anything." As Anna looked up at him, she realized that they had already built something incredible. Together, they had created not just a successful foundation, but a life built on love, trust, and mutual respect. They had come so far from that first meeting, that first moment of uncertainty, and now, standing here together, it felt like the world was full of endless possibilities. The journey had only just begun, and whatever the future held, Anna knew she would face it with Grant by her side. "I love you," she whispered, the words coming easily now, no longer held back by doubt or fear. Grant smiled, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "I love you too, Anna. Always have, always will." And, with those words, Anna knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning of their forever. They had found something real, something worth fighting for, and together, they were ready to face whatever came next. Hand in hand, they stepped into the future, ready to build a life filled with love, purpose, and endless opportunities.